All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Christy Ellis. I'm the senior consultant for Sage 100 here at Oasis Solutions. I've been doing year-end, helping people with year-end for about 12 years now. So I've been doing this for a while, and some of the stuff that you will see on this presentation is stuff that we say every year because you only do it once a year. It helps to have a little reminder, and then some of the stuff may be a little bit new. But either way, thank you for joining us and taking the time to prepare yourself so that you know what you have to do to get your ducks in rows for the remainder of the year and get your processing done. My clicker's not clicking. Oh. So today's agenda is that we are going to talk about what's required to process W-2s, uh, the electronic filing thresholds for the federal and state government, uh, Atrix and which forms you're going to need to process your W-2s, reconciliation information and tips, and period end tips and best practices, and then some frequently asked questions. And if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and I will address those at the end of the presentation. So what are the requirements from Sage 100 to process your W-2s? A little delay. So you must be current on your Sage software maintenance plan with Sage. You must have an active internet connection, of course. And then your compatibility for Atrix is that you should be on Sage 100 version 2022, that's 7.10 or newer. The minimum supported version for Sage 100 Payroll to process year end. Sage 100 Payroll 2.25 is getting ready to be released, and that's going to be the supported version. Usually they release it between December 15th through the 20th. I haven't gotten a final date on that, but usually it's closer to the 20th when they release that. So the Payroll 2.25, what's in it? It is the update that prepares your program to send the data and map all the data from your Sage 100 over to your Atrix form. So it's important that you have it so that you make sure that your mapping is correct from Sage 100 over to Atrix. It also will have year-end updates that generally will not be present in your 2.24 for local last-minute changes, also other data mappings that you might need, and so forth. So it's always good to be up on the most recent to make sure that you have everything you need to be in compliance. If you aren't able to get the 2.25 update, and there could be reasons for that. Maybe you've got an enhancement that may not be compatible, or it may be a while before it can be compatible. We just encourage you to do a very thorough reconciliation and testing to make sure that the data accurately goes over to your Atrix. And then, of course, if you find that there are some things that maybe didn't map over the way you had expected, you can make adjustments in your Atrix grid before you process your W-2s. In order to even install Payroll 2.25.0, you do need to be on Sage 100 version 2021 or newer. So just keep that in mind as well. And as always, we don't want you to break any customizations or enhancements that you may have by installing this on your own. So we do highly recommend that you contact our offices to help with your installations. We just want to make sure that you have the continuity with your customizations and enhancements, and to make sure it's seamless and you're not breaking something just by doing the installation. So we talked about Payroll 2.25, but don't forget there's also the tax update. And the tax update is the update that you get throughout the year. I'm sure you've seen it several times throughout this year already. It's the one that when you go into payroll, all of a sudden you're getting prompted, hey, there's a payroll tax update. Are you ready? Do you want to download it now? That's the one I'm talking about. And this particular update, this is what they call it CLAD information or Sage Tax Cloud. So CLAD information would include things like your thresholds. So like on your FICA, how much or Social Security, Medicare, what is the threshold? What is the wage base on that? Or what is your unemployment wage base for whatever state that you live in? Or is there a cap on those things? That type of information is held in your tax update. Also rates. So I just noticed the other day when I was working on my demo company that it prompted me, and I noticed that they have already released some of the Social Security and Medicare type of information with the effective date of 2025. So some of that stuff is already starting to filter through. So I do encourage you that that you install that whenever you are prompted. Users have to have role permissions in order to do the install. So just keep that in mind. And again, go ahead and install it when you're prompted if you can. If you can't, you can manually request the update. You just have to go into the menu to do so through the payroll module, utilities, and then the payroll tax update, and then launch it from there. So also keep in mind that for this install, it is a global install. So you cannot have any payroll in progress in any of your companies. Even if you have something payroll data entry in your test company, it's not going to allow the tax update to install. So you have to make sure that payroll data entry is completely empty in all companies in order for that to install. And don't forget, once you install it, look at that payroll tax update report, review it, and see if there's anything that impacts you. What else is required? On the Atrix side, when you generate your grid, Atrix has on their launcher, it has a timestamp that it kind of looks at to make sure that you have the most recent up-to-date tax forms. And when it does that and it prompts you, hey, you need to install the updates, you do have to have sufficient Windows permissions. You have to have administrative rights on your machine to be able to download and install these form updates. Atrix does usually start releasing those in that December 15th to 20th window, but they release them as they get their approval from all the tax entities that they work with, and they do work with I believe it's over 350 different governing agencies. So they have to get approval for their forms, and they do release those as they get the approvals. So it's not uncommon for them to continue releasing the forms throughout January. So you may be prompted several times during your processing if you are going through reconciliation process and going back and checking things and having to go back over the course of several days, you may get prompted multiple times for these forms updates. Just know that you do have to have sufficient Windows permissions. This is not a Sage permission issue. It is your Windows operating system that you have to have the permissions to do the install for that. So if you don't have that right, you may want to line up your IT person to be on call for when you are going to be doing your Atrix reconciliations and processing. Let's talk about electronic filing thresholds. Last year, you may remember that the federal government drastically lowered the number for the threshold of e-filing. They say if you have 10 or more informational returns that you have to e-file. So There are some of you guys that are smaller companies, and maybe you only have 6 or 7 W-2s. But keep in mind that the quantity of informational returns also includes the quantity of other informational returns that you do besides W-2s. And that, for most of our client base, that includes the 1099 series. So if you have to report 1099 information, just know that if you have 10 or more between the W-2s and the 1099s, you do need to e-file. On the state side, Kentucky is unchanged. If you have 26 or more withholding statements between the W-2 and 1099 series, then you have to e-file. All other states, I'm not so sure about, so you might want to check with your state revenue department to see what their thresholds are. Let's talk about doing some reconciliations, and I'll talk to you in a moment about why you want to do some of this stuff. But just to revisit some basic information here, that your gross wages are reduced by your pre-tax deductions, and typically those are the cafeteria and certain pension plan deductions. Now, I'm using that terminology, cafeteria deductions and pension plan deductions, because when you set up your deductions in Sage 100, you pick a deduction type, and I'm talking about those that you set up with those particular types. Pension plan deduction is a type, even though we now refer to it mostly as, most folks are doing 401k. But I'm just going to call it pension plan deduction because that's what Sage 100 uses in their terminology. So gross wages are reduced by those pre-tax deductions if a tax rule was assigned on it that says that it is supposed to reduce taxable wages. So that's why when you set up your deductions, that tax rule is so very important. And when we were transitioning from the legacy payroll to the new payroll, while we spent so much time looking at these things to make sure that we got it right when we helped you set it up. So if you've got newer deductions, obviously picking those tax rules are very, very important. So again, your subject wages are the wages subject to the tax. Gross wages less pre-tax deductions is going to equal your subject wages. And just for a reminder, on the federal side, federal taxable wages are generally reduced by cafeteria and certain pension plan deductions, whereas Social Security and Medicare are generally only reduced by the certain pension plan deductions. So I always have to go back and look at that because I never remember which one is which there. State wages are often reduced by cafeteria plan and certain pension plan deductions, but that can vary by state. So you'll just need to know what your state's requirements are on that. So what can we do for the reconciliation part? So prior to generating your W-2s, you want to do this. I recommend doing calculations. We have Excel. It works wonderfully, so you don't have to, use your fingers and toes. And it is definitely good practice to be doing this. You generate your quarterly tax report for the fourth quarter to get your gross wages. To get to the quarterly tax report, just a reminder, that's under the payroll reports section, and it's called quarterly tax report. Then you generate your deduction reports to get your year-to-date deduction values for those deductions that actually do reduce the taxable wages. So again, you're looking at your cafeteria plan deductions and certain pension plan deductions that are going to be reducing. You do have to know which codes those are so that you can plug them into your report and pull that detail. And to get to that, that's under payroll reports, deduction report. And then just do your calculation, gross less pre-tax deductions, and that's going to give you your subject wages. And then as far as the subject wages for federal income tax, of course, that's generally box 1. And then take your Atrix for a test drive. Keeping in mind the Atrix test drive you can go in and blow up the information. It's not going to save any data in the test drive mode. I say this every time. So, again, for those of you that do the test drive, don't go in and do a lot of work and then say, oh, how can I save this? You cannot save any data in the test drive mode. But for us, it does give you a way to go in and look at your detail first and get an idea of, what are you going to be dealing with before you get to January and it's crunch time. So you can do your calculations now and then go into Atrix and do a test drive and compare what Atrix is going to be pulling over and compare those now, and you'll know, oh, there's something that, if there's something that you need to correct, then you have some time to look at that before your last payroll. Why is it important to do that reconciliation? There are times when there may be a variance, and the reasons for that could be, we talked about tax rules a few moments ago. Let's say you had a tax rule. You had a new deduction, you assigned it a tax rule, and you thought that it was reducing your federal wages, and then you find out that it didn't, maybe because the tax rule on the deduction wasn't set properly when it was set up. Also, if you changed a tax rule on the deduction mid-year, that could cause a change. So keep in mind those tax rules are very important, and they do drive a lot of the subject wage calculations. Another way that could throw off those wages, if you have if you had a payroll check reversal and you reversed it the old legacy way, and when I say the old legacy way, if you've been around more than a hot minute, you remember the old legacy payroll, the reversals were very tedious and cumbersome because you had to manually enter every jot and tittle and negative in a negative amount, and you had to make sure that it matched exactly, and it was just very tedious and cumbersome. If you are still doing that with the new payroll, you are likely causing a variance. You do need to be using the one-click reversal button in the new payroll so that you can avoid that. So if you've had any payroll check reversals this year where you have manually done it the old way, where you manually put in all those negatives in every jot and tittle, you likely have a variance. So you'll want to check that and make sure that you don't have that. Another way is if you had a manual, or not a manual check, if you had a check where you entered manual taxes. If you had inadvertently or incorrectly entered the subject wages, that can cause the variance. So 3 different ways that we often will see cause variances on your subject wages. Obviously, doing reconciliations will help you find those and know we can assist you in correcting those if you find them. On the Social Security and Medicare side, again, figure out what your subject wages are, and then just do the math based on the percentages there. Social Security at 6.2%, again, subject to the wage-based threshold limit of $168,600 for this year. On the Medicare side, it's 1.45%, with an extra 0.9% for wages in excess of 200,000. So just do the math, because Atrix will give you a warning if your Social Security and Medicare withholdings differ by more than $1 from what the program calculates based on the subject wages. So again, do your reconciliations, know where your variances are, so that they can be addressed and you're not at the last minute panicking about, oh no, what do I do? If you do it prior to the last payroll of the year, that gives you the opportunity to adjust for under or over withholdings. If you're more than $1 away, you can make that adjustment on your last payroll if you need to. And as another reminder, before the last payroll of the year, if you have any non-cash fringes, you want to make sure that you get those recorded before your last payroll. So don't forget your vehicles, gift cards, or things like that that you need to record. Let's also talk, we've talked already about the W-2 processing and what you need to do for that so that you can get those that reporting done and get those statements to your employees. Let's also talk about period end processing. I started putting together questions that I've gotten quite frequently, or as we have seen issues arise, and we want to, help people not have those same heartaches and issues and have to make corrections. What are the best things that you can do for yourself here? The first thing is review the number of years to retain payroll history. In your setup, each company gets to pick, how many years they want to save history, and you can find that in under payroll setup, payroll options, tab 6, history. There is a setting that records the number of years to retain payroll history. On the newer versions, the default typically is going to be 5, but you could increase it to more years if you want 7 or 10 or whatever. But we do recommend that you review this prior to performing your period end processing for the year, because when you do your period end processing for the year, it's going to look at the data that you have in your database. If it is older than the number of years to retain history, then it will purge those records. So make sure that you know how many years of history you want to maintain before you perform your year-end processing, and those records, any older records, get purged. While you're on that same tab, that tab 6 history, we also recommend reviewing your audit tracking settings. Now, this isn't necessarily tied to year end. You can look at this throughout the year, but you want to make sure that your payroll is set to track changes according to your company's requirements. And again, this setting, the payroll options, those are based on a per company basis. So if you've got multiple companies that process payroll, you'll want to look at each one of those companies to look at the years to retain history and the audit tracking. We do recommend that you select to track changes, to track all changes, excuse me, and that you track the additions in detail and changes to employee pay rates, because that gives you the most visibility of things that are changing about your employees. Another thing, and this one actually was a newer occurrence that came up last year, is that we recommend that you review your deduction code settings. So on your deductions, so that's under payroll setup, deduction code maintenance, there is a setting at the, I guess, midway down that first column that says reset balance at year end. You want to look at all your deduction codes prior to performing your period end processing to make sure that that setting is set accordingly to that deduction. The reason why you want to look at that is there may be deductions that you do not want to reset at the end of the year. For example, you might have an employee that's paying back in advance and they haven't finished repaying it. Well, you don't want that to reset. Also, they may have 401k loans that they are repaying. You may not want those to reset. So just double check your deduction code settings, make sure that that reset balance at end of year is marked accordingly, and that you're not going to inadvertently reset a balance that you don't want to have reset. All right. Let's talk about other questions that we get pretty frequently. Do I need to run my W-2s before I run period end processing? No. On Payroll 2.x, the new payroll, The data tables store those detailed records year over year per the number of years that you're maintaining history. Again, that goes back to your payroll options, that setting the number of years to retain payroll history. It will save that number of years of history, and it does not get overwritten when you do period end processing. Those records remain. However, older records can age out based on the number of years that you're maintaining the history. So again, review that setting, and you can run your W-2s after you do period end processing. They are um, separate processes, and the data does stay there. If I made a company copy, should I process my forms in the live company or the copy? Now, in the legacy version, we did do the payroll copies every year because the old legacy payroll did overwrite tables during the period end processing. That's why we always made those company copies. You're not required to now. Some people still choose to do so, and that's totally fine. But if you are making company copies, we do still recommend that you do your uh, W-2s out of your live company. That way it archives all the W-2s and e-filings and so forth under your Atrix data in the file structure, and they're kept under the same database under the same company. That way you don't have to remember, oh, did I do it in this company or did I do it in this company? You will know that they're all together in that one live company. Can I run payroll for January 2025 before running period end processing for payroll 2024? This becomes really important for those that have weekly payrolls, and then you've got to worry about the holiday in between and getting your folks paid, and the tight time frame that you might have to do that. So the answer to that is yes and no. Is it possible to run the new payroll in the new year before you finish period end processing for the old one? With the new payroll, yes, it is possible. If you've got the payroll role permissions that allow that, yes, you can. However, it's not really best practice to do that. And the reason for that is when the period end processing runs, it does, when it's at the end of the year like that, it resets several calculation buckets. Things like your time off accruals, deduction goals, things like that get reset. And if you don't do your period end processing before your first payroll, then that information is not going to reflect accurately on your pay stubs for that first payroll of the year. So can you? Yes, you can run the new payroll before finishing out period end processing on the prior year, but best practice is go ahead and do, if you've finished all your payroll for the prior year, go ahead and do your period end processing. Do we have to e-file in order to use Atrix? Well, no. You can print from Atrix free. You do not have to e-file, but if you choose to use Atrix, or if you're required to e-file because of you've surpassed the threshold that the federal government has required, you do need to register with Atrix, and Atrix does charge a fee for the electronic processing. If you've not enrolled with Atrix before, it is super easy. I just need information on your company, your tax ID number, and of course they're going to want a payment method when you do process your forms. And you can enroll in advance at efile.atrix.com. I get asked this a lot. What is the fee schedule to electronic filing with Atrix? They change their fees, and they have a different fee structure based on what you're e-filing and what they're doing for you. If you are selecting them to print and mail, if you are just e-filing federal, if you're doing federal and state, there's a whole structure. The link here will give you, will map you directly to their fee schedule, and you can see what that is. And usually it is based on a per employee calculation. However, they do have minimums. Last year, the minimum was $24.99. The minimum this year is now $27.99, just giving a heads up for some of you guys that may be on the smaller side. And then also for everyone here, if you have to make a correction after you have submitted your W-2 filings, they are going to charge you $16.99 for that correction. Last year it was $14.99, so the prices did go up marginally on those. Let's talk deadlines, because everybody needs to know, when do I have to have it done? When do I have to have it done? Here's your link if you want to go directly to Atrix's website on the e-filing. But I did do a little snippet from their website from yesterday. I have highlighted a couple of things here. The W-2 federal date is the federal government has to have the information by January 31st. So in order for Atrix to be able to send that information and make sure they have enough time to send your data, your deadline is going to be January 30th at 3 p.m. Central Time to get them the data to send over. That is for your W-2s. And then if you are using Atrix to print your copies, also it's January 30th. But if you notice there toward the top, there is a listing that says the combined W-2 and 1095 copy. What that means is if you are trying to take advantage of the cost savings of having Atrix mail your W-2s and 1095s in the same envelope, you have a different deadline. Your deadline is going to be January 25th. If you choose to do W-2s and then separately 1095s, then those have their separate cutoff dates. But if you choose to have them mail it together in the same envelope, they need a little more time to get those combined, and they have the earlier date on that. So don't get caught off guard on that if you are having them do both. And keep in mind also on the 1095s, if you have to do the ACA reporting for 1095s, because that requires you to be at, I believe, a minimum of 50 employees to do the 1095s, and that of course is over the 10 threshold for the requirement for e-filing. Everything on the 1095 is e-filing, and so you have longer dates to get your 1095 copies. Those are February 28th, and then on the actual filing to the federal government, that's March 28th. So just a few deadlines there from Atrix. So if we want to print them and distribute them ourselves, what kind of forms are we going to need? And I'm just going to throw this note out here that we have quite a few of our clients that use Atrix for their print and mail services. And almost without exception, every one of the clients that I have spoken to have indicated they love it and they will never go back to printing them on their own. But you know, you just have to look at the cost effectiveness, and most of them will say that it is definitely, depending on the number of employees that you're printing, of course, that for them it was definitely more cost effective to do it that way. But you can still print them on your own if you'd like. No harm in doing that. But if you are, just remember that you do need the blank perforated 4-up format. Because the Atrix software does not print to the classic 2-part, you know, half page perforated W-2 format forms. You need the 4-up, and the 4-up format is the quad, so to speak. If you have a piece of paper and a cross down vertically down the middle and horizontally across the middle, that's your 4-up. So through Atrix, you do have the print and sign capabilities for those that are not required to be e-filed. So again, the blank perforated 4-up. Just a reminder out there that the IRS regulations do require that employee copies of the Form W-2, and the employee copies include the copies B, C, and copy 2, and also Form 1099. That they have to be printed on perforated paper for and the individual filing instructions have to be given to the recipients as well. So just throwing that out there. As far as where you can get your 4-up paper and your the resources that you need to do your W-2s, Sage Checks, they do sell the perforated 4-up forms as well as the bundles. But you do not have to get them from Sage Checks. You can get them from your local office supply store, or if you have a preferred office print house that you use, many of them will have it as well. But if you do decide to go to Sage Checks, the item number there is the bundle that includes the blank perforated 4-up, as well as the pre-printed instructions that go on the back and the envelope. So if you're looking to bundle and get all the components that you need, the LW2 BK 4DWS bundle is the one that has all those components that you will need. And just a refresher on when you actually do the printing, copies B, C, and 2 copy 2s are what print for the employee. Those have to go on the blank 4-up perforated with the notice on the back. On the federal W-2 and W-3, they want those to plain paper. So again, if you are under the 10 threshold and you want to print them and send and send paper copies to the government, their W-2 and W-3 copies are plain paper. And on the state side, the software does prompt you to load your blank 4-up forms in when you're printing your state, but you may want to check with your state agency. You may not need to have blank 4-up. A lot of state agencies will allow the plain paper as well. And of course, on yours, when you print the W-2s for your copy, it prints 4 employees per sheet, and you, of course, can print those to plain paper or PDF. A lot of us will, when I assist people, I help them do both paper copies and PDFs for their records. On the ACA side, if you have to file the 1095s, again, depending on if you're B or C forms, again, Sage Forms does have those forms as well. I've put on here what I normally have to search for. I just go to the Sage Checks website and type in on the search 1095 blank, and I can see the B forms or the C forms and select accordingly. Again, the 1094 and 1095 federal and employer copies can be printed on plain paper. And if you are using Atrix to print those out, they have created the 1095 forms so that the name and address alignment will fit in the same envelopes as the W-2 envelopes. So that can help you reduce your cost, knowing that they can go in those same W-2 envelopes as the 4-up W-2s. All right. As far as year-end assistance, I talked about helping folks with their processing. We are here to help you. We have a lot of folks, obviously, that have the same deadline, so we do our assistance done by scheduled appointments, and we are already starting to get our appointments scheduled. I know I still have a few requests that I'm still evaluating. I get the request, I look at what version you're on, what version you're going to need, and then do you have enhancements that need to be considered, and then I talk to you about scheduling that and what makes sense for when you are going to be processing. But we do go ahead and get that scheduled for you, keeping in mind with the holidays. Our offices are going to close early on Tuesday, December 24th, and be closed Wednesday, December 25th for the Christmas holiday. And then the same thing happens the following week. We close early on Tuesday, December 31st, and be closed Wednesday, January 1st for the New Year's holiday. I tried to put the link on the chat and it didn't get my it didn't get the web address copied over like it was supposed to. So I apologize for that. If you need um, that link to schedule an update or update installation or forms processing assistance, or if you want to schedule an appointment just to discuss some things that maybe you had going on and you want to make sure you are addressing things in a timely manner, feel free to reach out to our tech support at oasisky.com, and we'll make sure that you get the link, or we circle up and make an appointment and discuss whatever needs you have. So that is all I've got for right now. Let me check the question and answer. Can we print the presentation? I can have, I know we are recording this presentation, and I can also make a PDF of the presentation, and I can see if our media team can send those links out to you so that you can have those available to you so you can go back and review as you need to. So absolutely. If there's any other questions, I'll be glad to respond to those now. Just put them in your chat. All right. Well, I appreciate you attending today. Again, if you have any questions, just reach out to tech support at oasisky.com, and I'll be glad to help. Or we do have other members of the team. I'm not the only person on the team, so we do have a team of people that can assist. So if you have any questions, just reach out to tech support at oasisky.com, and we will circle up and help get you taken care of. And thank you so much for spending your time today.